Everybody together from the heart. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare. One more time, everybody from the heart. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo. Jayam Vishipad, Paramahansa Purvikacharya, Asatara Satta Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishipad, Paramahansa Purvikacharya, Asatara Satta Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath. Shai Makunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dhama Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Vinda Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Brihamadanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Transcendental Prasadam Distribution Ki Jai. Go Premanandi. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Kalachandji Radha Kalachandji Shri Radhe. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Radha Kalachandji ki jai. Shri Gaurnitai ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go to Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Together. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamuntirayat Nashta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashoke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee. All that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual masters have kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto them, and I beg for service life after life after life. Welcome to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are in Canto 5, Chapter 11, and we're going to be reading through verses 12 through the end of the chapter, verse 17. Who can remind me what's going on? What just took place, and then who's speaking to whom right now? The mic?
Jad Bharat was carrying the palanquin, and he was shaking it around a lot to avoid stepping on the ants. And then Marjahugana chastises him, and now Jad Bharat is revealing himself to be a self-realized person, and he's kind of counter-chastising Marjahugana.
Right. This is like the first time he's speaking coherent words in this entire life, this entire birth that he's taken. He's been pretending to be deaf and dumb and crazy and just like a madman, and so he got chastised very heavily in this way, and now he's taken this opportunity to share the knowledge of self-realization with this king and with the whole world through this king, with us. So that's where we're at. We're going to continue with his instructions, starting with verse 12. Please read.
The individual soul bereft of Krishna consciousness has many ideas and activities created in the mind by external energy. They have been existing from time immemorial. Sometimes they are manifest in the wakening state and in the dream state. But during the deep sleep, unconsciousness, or trance, they disappear. A person who is liberated in this life, Jivan Mukta, can see all these things vividly.
So he's basically saying like the mind does all of these things, and then you sleep very deeply, or we get pulled into the body of Mahavishnu while he's inhaling, and then we forget everything. It just becomes unmanifest. So we can sometimes be so attached to our thoughts and our ideas and all of these things, but they just come and go. And a self-realized person, a liberated person, sees this very clearly.
There are two kinds of Kshetragya: the living entity as explained above, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is explained as follows. He is the all-pervading cause of creation. He is full in himself and is not dependent on others. He is perceived by hearing and direct perception. He is self-effulgent and does not experience birth, death, old age, or disease. He is the controller of all the demigods, beginning with Lord Brahma. He is called Narayan. And he is the shelter of living entities after the annihilation of this material world. He is full of all opulences, and he is the resting place of everything material. He is therefore known as Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By his own potency, he is present within the hearts of all living entities, just as the air or vital force is within the bodies of all beings, moving and non-moving. In this way, he controls the body. In his partial feature, the Supreme Personality of Godhead enters all bodies and controls them.
Who can explain to me what Kshetragya means, like literally, and then also like what it represents?
the knower of the field.
Where did you hear this?
Bhagavad Gita.
Right. Okay, and what does that mean, the knower of the field? What is that referring
Like
to?
who is aware of the field being like what the soul can experience, like the body and like
Mind,
the
senses.
mind and the senses.
Yeah, so this is the field. So Kshetra is field, like Kurukshetra, like this battlefield. This is the Kshetra is the field, and Gya is knowledge of the field. Okay, thank you. So basically, this is explaining there's two. There's us, the jiva soul, we're the knower of this field of activities, our body, but we're only the knower of this field of activities, our field of activities. And then there's the supreme Kshetragya, the knower of all fields of activities everywhere, and this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay. Go ahead.
My dear Rahugana, as long as the conditioned soul accepts the material body and is not freed from contamination of material enjoyment, and as long as he does not conquer his 6 enemies and come to the platform of self-realization by awakening his spiritual knowledge, he has to wander among different places and different species of life in this material world.
Do you know who the 6 enemies are? Who wants to say what the 6 enemies are?
Lust, anger, greed,
Pride, envy, and illusion.
illusion.
Yeah, madness, illusion, madness, yeah. Thank you for that question.
Text 16. The soul's designation, the mind, is the cause of all tribulations in the material world. As long as this fact is unknown to the conditioned living entity, he has to accept the miserable condition of the material body and wander within this universe in different positions. Because the mind is affected by disease, lamentation, illusion, attachment, greed, and enmity, it creates bondage and a false sense of intimacy within this material world.
The mind is the cause of all tribulations, and as long as this fact is unknown to the conditioned living entity, he has to accept the miserable condition of this material body. This is why humility is so important. If we humble ourselves, then we can understand these things. If we are proud, then we'll never accept that. My mind is wrong. My mind is the cause of my suffering. No, this is why humility is so important. We'll talk about that a little more later.
The uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy of the living entity. If one neglects it or gives it a chance, it will grow more and more powerful and will become victorious. Although it is not factual, it is very strong. It covers the constitutional position of the soul. O King, please try to conquer this mind by the weapon of service to the lotus feet of the spiritual master and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Do this with great care.
Okay, this is our verse actually, so we'll go ahead and read the Sanskrit for this. It looks weird on my phone. So. Pratrivyamenam tarabhadraviryam Pratrivyamenam tarabhadraviryam Upekshaya deyeditam apramata Upekshaya deyeditam apramata Guror Hirishcharanupasanoshas Pashanastro Guror Hirishcharanupasanoshas Jahi Vyalikam Svayamatmamosham Jahi Vyalikam Svayamatmamosham. Please chant. Pratrivyamenam tarada praviyam Upekshaya Dyeditam Apramata Gurur Harischaranopassanastro Jahi Vyalikam Swayamatmamusham. One more. Pratrivyamenam tadabdabraviryam Upekshaya Dyeditam Apramata Gurur Harischaranopassanastro Jahi Vyalikam Swayamatmamusham. You can go through the word for word. Pratrivyam, the formidable enemy. Enam, this mine. Tat, that. Abhadraviryam, very powerful. Upekshaya, by neglecting. Adyeditam, unnecessarily increased in power. Apramataha, one who is without illusion. Guru, of the spiritual master. Hare, the supreme personality of Godhead. Charana, of the lotus feet. Upasanastra, the weapon of worshipping. Jahi, conquering. Vyalikam, false. Swayam, personally. Atmamosham, which covers the constitutional position of the living entity. And maybe we can read this all together as well. This uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy of the living entity. If one neglects it or gives it a chance, it will grow more and more powerful and will become victorious. Although it is not factual, it is very strong. It covers the constitutional position of the soul. O King, please try to conquer this mind by the weapon of service to the lotus feet of the spiritual master and the supreme personality of Godhead. Do this with great care. What a verse. Purport. There is one easy weapon with which the mind can be conquered. Neglect. The mind is always telling us to do this or that. Therefore, we should be very expert in disobeying the mind's orders. Gradually, the mind should be trained to obey the orders of the soul. It is not that one should obey the orders of the mind. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say that to control the mind, one should beat it with shoes many times just after awakening and again before going to sleep. In this way, one can control the mind. This is the instruction of all the Shastras. If one does not do so, one is doomed to follow the dictations of the mind. Another bona fide process is to abide strictly by the orders of the spiritual master and engage in the Lord's service. Then the mind will be automatically controlled. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has instructed Srila Rupa Goswami, Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavana Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata Bija. When one receives the seed of devotional service by the mercy of the Guru and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one's real life begins. If one abides by the orders of the spiritual master, by the grace of Krishna, he is freed from service to the mind. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 5th canto, 11th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Jad Bharat Instructs King Rahugana. Wow, what an amazing, I'm not going to do this justice. I wish that we had someone more qualified speaking, but I've been asked. So I wanted to focus again on the previous verse where Jad Bharat is saying yeah, that we have to understand that the mind is the cause of all tribulations in the material world. We have to get this point through into our head, because yeah, like I was saying before, when we're unaware, when we don't humble ourselves, then we think that there's nothing wrong. We think that I don't need to change, I don't need to do anything. That's one aspect. Another aspect is that Krishna fulfills our desires. Krishna as Paramatma and as himself, this is the whole reason why he created the material world, was because we had some desire to enjoy. And so he loves to fulfill our desires, or sometimes he doesn't love to, but he does it because he loves us. So when we see how much trouble the mind is causing us, when we see that the mind is the cause of all tribulations in the material world, then maybe we will develop the desire to be free from the clutches of the mind. This is true with any anartha that we may have. I had this question one time. Why do I have to, because this is what people say, you have to see it. You have to see your lust before it can, before you can be free from it. We have to become conscious before we can become Krishna conscious. So I was wondering, why? Why do I have to see it in my face, my lust, my envy, all of these things, my greed? Why does it have to become so powerful and in my face before I can be free from it? That's because until we really see it and we really see the effect and the hold that it has on us, we don't want to be free from it. We're attached to these things. They bring us some temporary sense of pleasure or control over our situation. And so we actually don't want to be free from it until it bites us. So that's why it has to come up. It has to come. We have to become aware of our mind, aware of our narthas, because then we can develop the desire to be free from them. This is the only power that we have as the soul, actually, is the power of desire. To actually become free from these anarthas is not in our control. There's nothing that we can do by our sadhana, by any of these things. We have no control. The only thing that we can actually do is desire. All of our actions, our sadhana, our prayers, all of these things are reflections of our desire. And they show Krishna how deep and sincere our desire is. And then when he sees our sincere desire, he takes action. He decides, okay, this person has suffered enough with this envy or this greed or whatever it is. I'll take it from them. They don't want it anymore. They wanted it for a while. They wanted to try to find some enjoyment in these things, and now they're done. Okay, I'll take it. So this is why we need to become aware of the tribulations caused by the mind. Right, so then in this purport of verse 17, Srila Prabhupada tells us, actually just the verse itself. Let's see. If one neglects it or gives it a chance, it will grow more and more powerful and will become victorious. Okay, we can understand, we should not give the mind too many chances. The mind comes up with so many things. Have you ever heard the term intrusive thoughts? These thoughts can be anything, and they're wild sometimes. And if we just listen to them or act on them or even say them out loud, people will look at us like a crazy person. Yeah, what to speak of actually, taking those thoughts and running with them and pursuing them and trying to make it a reality. This is actual insanity if we listen to all of the dictations of the mind. So we shouldn't give it too many chances, for sure. But we also shouldn't neglect the mind. We shouldn't just, oftentimes, at least for me in the beginning of my chanting, I would be chanting and some thought would come and push it out. And I've heard other people say they have a similar experience, let me just get this out. And that's, this is a good way, I think, in the beginning, the way to engage with the mind. Just get out. Don't focus on these thoughts. Don't even pay attention to them. Don't just kind of suppress or repress these things. But if we neglect the mind, it'll also grow more powerful. We can't just pretend. We can't artificially renounce our desires, our mind. We have to at least take note, okay, this is there, and then we can choose to either pray about it, Krishna, please remove this from my heart, or we can say, okay, maybe this is a sincere desire, maybe this is something that needs to be purified in this lifetime. And in that case, we'll go to the spiritual master. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Before I get there, I wanted to discuss also this on the topic of not neglecting the mind. I remember I asked His Holiness Radhanath Swami a question one time about enthusiasm, and he gave a very long, beautiful answer. And one thing that he said was that this material world, there's laws in this material world, such as the law of gravity. And this law of gravity is very much applicable to our spiritual life, or to anything in this material world. We have to be in a constant state of maintaining anything that we try to do in this material world, whether that's having a home or a family or keeping our teeth in our mouth. Like, we have to brush every day, right? Like, we can't just neglect. We constantly have to put in some effort. If we relax for one moment, it's like a bird flying in the sky. The bird can relax for a second and soar a little bit, but it'll start going down. It's not just going to continue going up. This is true for anything in this material world. If we neglect it, the automatic reaction is that it will start to go down. So with our spiritual life as well, or with our mind, as soon as we neglect to control our mind, automatically degradation begins at that very moment. We have to be in a constant state of either trying to improve or at least trying to maintain the level that we're at. Maybe we've vowed to chant a certain number of rounds per day and follow the 4 regulative principles, and that's our minimum. And perhaps most of us, Prabhupada Priya was giving class in the evening the other day, and she was saying how we should actually strive for a much higher standard. We should strive to read every day, to go to a morning program, to do all these things, because then when we inevitably have our dips, we don't dip past that lowest standard. But at the very least, we need to make sure that we are maintaining that standard. If we get to relax for a day, then suddenly I didn't chant all my 16 rounds and they carried over to the next day. And if that continues for too long, it can just be a nightmare. So we always have to be putting in some effort. That's the material world that we're in. This is a place of tapasya. This is a place for that we're meant to struggle for a higher purpose. This human form of life, this is what we're here to do. This is what we're called to do. So we have to make sure that we're always on guard, that we're always in at least this state of maintenance, maintaining the standard that we're at. Ideally, though, we're always trying to improve. ABS, always better service. I think maybe came from Vaisheshika Prabhu or someone, but we should always be striving for better. That way, when inevitably we'll all have our dips, but it won't be so low that we fall. So yeah, this is kind of the theme that was assigned to today's class, is ignore the mind's demands and fix the mind on Krishna. So the second part, this is the first part, ignoring the mind's demands. The second part is to fix the mind on Krishna. So, oh wow, time's going really fast. So that's when I go back to this concept of not neglecting the mind. There's two ways, in one way we shouldn't neglect the mind and that we shouldn't let it dip. And another way we also need to take into account what the mind is suggesting sometimes, because that might be something like if we artificially renounce the desires or the thoughts of the mind, it could nag at us and distract us from our Krishna consciousness. Whereas if we figure out a way to use those things in Krishna's service, it can actually assist and help us in our Krishna consciousness. And this is where a spiritual master is very important. Please try to conquer this mind by the weapon of service to the lotus feet of the spiritual master. And Prabhupada goes into detail in the purport, explaining that if one abides by the orders of the spiritual master, by the grace of Krishna, we are freed from service to the mind. Because then, whatever the mind was trying to get us to do, if we bring that up to the guru, and the guru tells us, okay, go about it in this way, then we're no longer serving the mind, we're serving the guru. And the duty of the guru is to instruct us according to our nature. Sometimes there's a need, there's a need that has to be filled, and so we might get some instruction that's not necessarily according to our nature. It will purify our hearts to act in that service anyways. But typically, when there's not an emergency, the guru will typically instruct us according to our nature. Okay, I see that your nature is to be renounced, I'll instruct you as a brahmachari. Or I see that your nature is to, be a householder, to take care of family, and so I'll instruct you in this way. Or I see that, you're even physically, you're in a man's body, or you're in a woman's body, or you have maybe some problem with your health, or you're very healthy. So in this way, that the spiritual master is very, very personal and can instruct us according to our nature, as well as according to our psychophysical nature, like our mind, intelligence, these things. And in this way, the restless mind can actually find shelter. The mind is not just left outside to, wonder how it's going to be. I don't know, just, you know what I mean. It's not like a little dog that you kicked outside. It's actually, the mind is also brought under the shelter of the spiritual master. The mind can also rest there. Okay, I can be peaceful because I know that my Guru Maharaj gave me an instruction that will keep me calm and engaged in devotional service. I'll be able to fulfill some of these desires that I have in this life and use them to serve Krishna, and thus be purified from these desires and ultimately go back to Godhead. And yeah, the spiritual master will instruct us according to our nature, the nature of the body, the nature of the mind, all of these things. But ultimately, like, brahmachari, grihastha, sannyas, male, female, vaishya, whatever, all of these things. But ultimately, we are none of these things. And the spiritual master knows this more than anyone. What's the verse again? Lord Chaitanya says. What's the English? Can you say it in the mic?
It says, I'm not a brahmana, I'm not a kshatriya, I'm not a vaishya or a shudra, nor am I a brahmachari, a grihastha, vanaprastha, or a sannyasi. I identify myself only as the servant of the servant of the servant, of the lotus feet of the maintainer of the gopis, who is always existing in universal brilliance.
Jai. Gopi Bhartu Parakamalayor Das Das Anudas. I am the servant of Krishna, the lover of the gopis. This is what the spiritual master sees in us. And all of these instructions that the spiritual master may give according to time, place, and circumstance ultimately is to bring us towards this eternal service as the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as we ourselves, as souls, as we follow the instructions of the spiritual master, even though for now they're based on my material conditioning, as we follow these instructions, we gradually also awaken to this aspect of ourselves, the eternal, truest nature of the soul. We awaken to the fact that we are eternal servants of Krishna. In the spiritual world, we have an eternal relationship with him. And as we start to wake up to this true nature in this life, in this body, with these mind and senses, I'm sure we all have some experience. Like we're a little more awake than we were maybe when we first joined, maybe even more than a few years ago. It's a gradual process. Maybe we're not fully aware of that relationship yet, but we can experience ourselves waking up. And to the degree that we wake up, to that degree, the mind and intelligence and senses, they all come under the control of the soul. Can you pull up the picture of the senses and the horses and this one? And this will be the last point, and then I'll open it up for some discussion. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Yeah, so in this picture, you'll hopefully be able to see it more clearly soon. You'll notice that the senses are the horses, and they're going crazy. They're just going in this direction and that direction, because the senses are like that. Like my body wants one thing, my nose wants another thing, my eyes want this thing, and and the mind is just like, the duty of the mind is to accept and reject. So in this conditioned state, typically we're used to following the dictations of the senses. The soul is fast asleep in the back, or even this one, the soul looks pretty scared. But but the mind is the reins. The intelligence is the one holding the reins. So the mind just accepts and rejects. The senses say, the senses say, I want to enjoy this, I want to enjoy that, the mind says, okay, yes, we'll go enjoy this. Oh, this smells good. I'm going to go through this drive-through. Okay, the mind says yes. The intelligence is now engaged in the service of the mind and the senses. The intelligence is thinking, oh, what frappe do I want today? And like the intelligence is being used so like superficially and like so silly and dumb. It's just like this amazing ability that we have to come up with ideas and thoughts and all of these things. It's being used to figure out what flavor juice we want or whatever, based on the tongue, based on the senses. And the mind is just like asleep or scared or just like so disconnected from Krishna. But when we start to develop this understanding of our true nature as servants of Krishna through the grace of the spiritual master and Krishna himself, then the soul wakes up and the intelligence becomes subservient to the soul. So the soul says, no, you want to be a servant of Krishna. Okay, so the intelligence is like, okay, how do we do that? Let's read the scriptures. Okay, it says that I need to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. So then the mind says, yes. The mind says yes or no. The mind accepts and rejects. The mind accepts that as, okay, that's likely going to help us reach our goal. Yes, we'll do that. And then the senses, under the control of the mind, pick up the japa beads, feel them in our fingers, we hear the sound vibration in our ears, and everything is working smoothly. So right now, for most people in the conditioned state, everything is working backwards. But through this process of Krishna consciousness, we set it right. And then all of the senses, all of the horses are now going in the same direction. They're going towards Krishna. And so the chariot can actually move. When the horses are all like this, going this way and that way, the chariot's not actually going to go anywhere. We just stay here, stuck in the cycle of birth and death. The chariot cannot move if there's not one direction. So when the soul takes control and gives us some direction, then the senses can be engaged in cleaning the temple and doing all of these things and lead us towards this realization of our eternal relationship with Krishna. Okay, that's it. Sorry, I went a little bit over. Any discussion or questions? Sorry, that was a lot. Tulsi?
Thank you, Prima, for a nice class. So why am I fearful of neglecting the mind? Why, I've heard this and I want to, and yet I'm like, okay, maybe my mind is telling me something good here. And you touched on that point, right? That, okay, take note, pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, where is my intelligence? Like, why is it not kicking in, So
I think somebody could give such a nice answer, I'm sure, like Gokulananda Prabhu or Mandri Gopika could probably, Nanda Braj. But the first thing that came to mind for me is we don't trust Krishna yet. We've been in this material world for so long and we've been burned so many times. In this material world, if you let go of control, you're screwed. Like it's going to be a very difficult time for you. And so we don't when Krishna tells us like, I will take care of you, do not fear, like just abandon everything else and come to me. We don't trust him yet, but we can. And that's a gradual process. That's what Krishna consciousness is. Krishna consciousness starts from Shraddha, right? This is the first stage. But the stages, the following stages of developing our bhakti, they're all just increasing our Shraddha. It's different words for increased Shraddha. Our faith becomes more and more strong. And so, this can be done through experimentation. We accept a spiritual master. That's a big act of trust and faith, and then following the instructions of the spiritual master. Gradually, we start to see that, okay, I haven't died yet. Okay, it is working. The process is working, and so the trust starts to develop. But that's why I think that's probably that's a big reason that I think comes to mind. It's like we just don't have that trust yet, but we will. Does anyone else have a comment on this point?
Actually, you explained it all, but I just remembered one time Sachinandan Swami, he had mentioned this in a brahmachari class. It touched my heart. He said, the functions of mind is thinking, feeling, willing, right? All of, they are like three gates.
Mm.
It's correspondent to what Krishna says, Dhyate Vishan Punsa, right? So any thought comes, negative, any negative thought comes. So if we let it pass through the first gate, thinking, then it's easier to control it. But once it passes through the second gate, feeling, we start feeling about, then it's very difficult. And then finally it has to end up in willing.
Wow. Yeah, and that's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. It all starts with contemplation. Once it passes through the first gate of thinking, and if we contemplate and we ruminate on that thought, it won't be long before it invokes some feeling, and then we have to act. Good point. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so you were talking about, just on this point, sometimes I had this experience lately where like I had this attachment that I didn't even know like I still had, and you were talking about how like Krishna shows us our anarthas so that we can deal with it and stuff like that. And sometimes I'm sure many people have experienced this before, but you're sitting there and you're thinking like, do I really want Krishna more than I want Maya? Or sometimes you're like, maybe I actually want Maya more than I want Krishna. Maybe I like my my old music or my old this and that or stuff like that. Maybe I like my, Facebook or something like that. Because in the end, we will have to give up everything for Krishna. We will have to, like, if we want to go back to Godhead, we will have to surrender 100%. And so sometimes it's like, do I really want Krishna more than I want Maya? So what does someone do in that situation where they're unsure if they even want Krishna over Maya?
I mean, deep down, please. Yeah. Wait, can you say it into the mic, Prabhu? Can you repeat one more time so that the online can see?
I think I've had those same exact thoughts. But when Krishna really favors you, he takes everything away. Or at least you come to the conclusion after a long life of repeated disappointments, because eventually every desire in the material world, even if it is fulfilled, is still taken away. So in the pursuance of those temporary pleasures, one experiences so much misery, the three basic forms of suffering. And once you're convinced that the eternal soul has chosen to exist in this realm of repeated birth and death and suffering, then the intelligence, which is controlling the mind, says, better choice, spiritual life. Take the plunge, take the risk, because you're going to die anyway. So as Prabhupada said, even if any of this isn't true, it's a wonderful way to live.
Yeah. Yeah, and ultimately it is the deepest desire of the soul to be with Krishna. It is what will bring us, So it's so here's a practical like thing that can just be done, is that very carefully choosing your association, because when we who we associate with, whatever their desires are, is it's probably going to become our desire, because we see they're getting some pleasure from these things. They're getting some pleasure from this music, or they're getting some pleasure from eating out, so I'll probably get some pleasure from that too. And so we should associate with people that get pleasure from Krishna consciousness, because then we'll convince ourselves I'll probably get pleasure from that too. I think that's probably practical, what you can do. But I think it also just goes back to trust, and goes back to understanding it's gonna be a gradual process. We're gonna have desires. We're gonna have low dips where we think, that Maya can bring us some happiness. And then like Prabhu was saying, we're going to realize it's temporary. We're going to try. We're going to go on YouTube and binge for an hour, and then we're going to feel like poop afterwards. Sorry. Yeah. And then we're going to it'll just be a confirmation that we can't get any pleasure. Or maybe, you know, some people, they go away for a couple years, and I pray that that doesn't happen to any of us, but we can learn from these experiences that they have. They go away for a couple of years, and they really put all their effort into trying to enjoy material energy, and it just doesn't work. And like you said yourself, at the time of death, we have to give up everything anyways. So we might as well practice now, giving everything up for pleasure rather than giving everything up for temporary material sense gratification. You can give everything up for actual spiritual bliss. Mm-hmm. And 1 second, yeah.
Thank you, Krishna. Guru Maharaj is a extremely important piece to this puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that. I'm not saying anything new. So, though the time we spend with them is a luxury, it's meaning it's a very high quality time, and they're also busy with their preaching, and we should nevertheless strive to spend as much time with them as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, because they are the one ultimately take care of us under their shelter, handhold us, and go to our ultimate destination. So, slowly increase the time more and more that we spend with them. So, yeah.
That's such a good point. And sometimes that we can't necessarily spend that time with them physically, but by hearing their lectures, that is the same thing. Like, that is the same thing as taking their association and being with them. So in that way, like we take association of advanced devotees. That doesn't always mean that we're going to have access to advanced devotees, like super advanced devotees in our immediate vicinity. So, but we have these phones, and we can access countless amazing devotees and amazing lectures, and that's our association. And they can elevate us through their transcendental sound vibration. Any final additions?
I was just thinking, like, on the point of, like, you can get your phone out and you can listen to lectures. It's kind of interesting the generation we're in Krishna consciousness. I was talking to Prabhupada Priya, and I was like, yeah, like, Maya's just like everywhere. And he's like, well, back in my day, like, we didn't have phones, you know. You were in the temple, and that's like that's all there was, you know. Unless you like went outside on the street and like physically walked to some place, you know, like you were with devotees, you were with Prabhupada's books and stuff like that. And so we kind of have this constant choice, like whether we want to listen to that lecture or we want to listen to, you know, some random kind of nonsense. It's yeah, so it's kind of like there's always, you know, at any second we can choose to go either way. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's that, and then it just goes back to prayer. It just goes back to saying, like, Krishna, this is my desire right now, and it's not favorable for my relationship with you. Please help me. Even while I'm in the middle of watching Netflix or something, I'll be praying like that internally. Not that I do this often, but like, yeah, I've had that experience where I'm engaging in some mundane activity, and externally I'm there, I'm with it, I'm laughing, whatever. But internally, deep down, I am praying, Krishna, please don't let this become a habit for me. Krishna, please help me develop a higher taste. When this is done, please let me just turn back to you instead of, you know, continuing to think about this activity. Yeah. There's always a reason to pray.
It touched my point when you said, you know, at the time of death we have to give up everything, so we might as well start practicing it now. I remember this funny thing. Jayadvaita Swami, he was talking about this same thing on similar lines, and somebody He was not a practitioner of Krishna consciousness over there. But I see you guys, especially brahmacharis and sannyasis, you have laptops and phones. And then he said, in his typical witty style, he said, what is easier to give up, cell phones and laptops, or wife, children, husband, and so on and so forth, your house, property, bank balance, what is easier? The point he mentioned was it was easier for, those who are in that kind of order of life. Less you have, it is easier to give up. More you have, so difficult. It was a wake-up call for me. Thank you.
Another thought that I have in that regard is that to give up, we sometimes think of the word to give up is like to give up, like to stop using, like to just, reject this thing. Another way that I kind of hear it or feel it in my heart is like to give up. So I have wife, I have a kid, I have all of these things, and I give it up. It doesn't belong to me. I still maintain these things. I still take care. I still do. Yeah, I give up the attachment or the ownership or the, proprietorship of these things. I give it up to Krishna. Not necessarily that I just like.
Constantly hear him chant and be able to listen to kirtan, bhajan lectures. It's an amazing facility. So Prabhupada's purport was to use everything in Krishna service. So these machines are an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, that's real vairagya, is to use everything in Krishna. What do we have to renounce? Yeah, and that's what's going to happen in the golden age. That's what's predicted, right? The whole world is going to become, spiritualized, because everything, it's not that we're going to neglect the world, it's that we're going to use everything in the world for Krishna's service. Sorry, the last point.
That's a realization that I'm coming to now, because I find myself often like kind of criticizing or like being upset of like how easily Maya is accessible nowadays with all of this technology, but at the same time Krishna is easily accessible to infinity. Like lectures by Prabhupada and his disciples, all of the books are literally right there on Veda base. We even have devotees who have read them, so we have the audio books. We have like so much access to Krishna also. So at the end of the day, it's what do we decide to do,
Okay, on that note, let's use everything in Krishna's service and engage the mind in Krishna's service and chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Vancha kalpatarubhyascha, kripa sindhubhya vacha, patitanam pavanebhyo, vaishnavebhyo namo namaha, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sadhana Lalita Sri Vishakhan Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,